that's not a blob of tissue. It is a baby. It's a baby.
The lies that the abortion industry went through and continues to go through to try to deceive people, make them feel comfortable. That's really all they're trying to do. They're just trying to make people feel comfortable with killing children. Mm-hmm. It's hard to make people feel comfortable with killing children. You have to dehumanize the child. They hate competition.
Yeah.
They like the power and they like control. So they're going to destroy these two institutions, the family and the church. The idea that a society takes the institution of marriage created by God to bind men and women together in a healthy home in which to have and raise children, to honor and love and serve Him. That's what marriage is. It is not the love between two people.
Right.
Marriage has a specific role in society, and society has to honor that and respect it. And when you don't, you get less of it. And guess what we have now? Less marriage. People are concerned about immigration. I am too, and I, as you know, was a very strong fighter against illegal immigration and still am. I am not against legal immigration, and I'm certainly not against legal immigration from people in Central and South America.
Right.
I have more problems when it comes to people from Algeria and Morocco and Pakistan. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'll just be honest. Those two cultures, the Muslim culture and the Western culture, have been at war for 1,300 years.
Yeah.
And why? Because they are foundationally different. No majority Muslim country has freedom. None.
Senator Santorum, thank you for coming back.
Thank you, Conor.
Yeah, so we just had a nice lunch.
Enjoyed lunch.
Yep, and you've been so gracious with your time, and just getting to know you has been a real privilege and honor. The first episode, our focus on family and faith, was inspiring to say the least.
Long.
It was long. No, it was perfect. It felt like 30 minutes.
All of my family and friends who know me say, "Well, of course it was long." I mean, that's what I do. I do long.
Well, my wife says about me that, when she introduced me to her grandmother or great grandmother when we were dating, she said, "You should be a lawyer because you got the gift of gab."
Yeah.
So, and I did. I became a lawyer.
Me too.
Yeah. So look, this time we're gonna talk more country and culture, but just like last time, I thought I would start with some rapid fire. Okay. And last time it wasn't too rapid, which is fine. Don't feel rushed. But
your questions are rapid. My answers are
no, it's fine. But the point of this is just to kind of get to know you a little bit. But these are a little bit more, related to country and culture. Okay. Which founding father would you most like to have a beer with?
Washington, for sure. I mean, he was the indispensable man.
Yeah.
I've read several bios on him, and interesting, complex person, but an amazing leader. Someone who just seemed to have the intuition to know when to. When to sort of go forward and when to pull back, mm-hmm. right? And everything from his military tactics to his political tactics. I mean, he was not a politician. He was not a very good politician, but he knew when, to accept and to run and to be president. He didn't want to run for a second term, but he felt the obligation to do so for a variety of different reasons. And then he was decisive, even though they wanted him to stay, to leave. I mean, that's just a wisdom. And just look at his military maneuvers. There was incredible amount of wisdom in that man. And I happen to think, the hand of God in guiding this nation.
Yeah. And even in how he selected the title, like people want to say Your Highness, Your Excellency. Yeah. And I think he said, no, just Mr. President.
Yep.
Even that was a sign of, it meant something.
Well, obviously coming from a sovereign, a country run by a king who was treated differently, he wanted to be treated just like everybody else.
Okay. So my second question, now that question was who you can have a beer with, right? This one is favorite American president, and you can't say Washington, Lincoln, or Reagan. Because that's what everyone says.
Yeah. Favorite American president, not one of those guys. Because those would.
That's what makes it hard.
Yeah. I could pick from several. I'd say Coolidge.
Yeah, you know what? I thought you might say that. And can I guess why?
Go ahead.
It's because he just said no to everything.
Yeah, he understood, and he was a man who had his finger in the dike of what was going to happen to this country. And a little history here, but the founders created Washington D.C. and created created the federal government to be limited, and they structured the Constitution to make sure that happened. And the most important element of that was fill in the blank.
Limited government.
Now, what was the most important element of maintaining limited government that was in the Constitution?
The 10th Amendment?
Mm-mm.
Leave everything back up to the states?
The creation of the United States Senate and the way it was created.
Really? I wouldn't know that. Yeah, explain.
So the United States Senate in its original form was not elected by the American people.
Yes, that's an amendment, right? So
it was
initially
the 17th Amendment.
Right.
It was initially senators were appointed by the state legislatures of their states. And the states, and the reason they were is because this was a way to make sure that the rights of the states, remember, almost everybody who came to the Constitutional Convention of 1787 were representing the interests of the state and were state legislators or governors. And we're interested in protecting the rights of the states. Remember, the United States of America was created by the states, right? People sort of forget that the states were primary, and that the federal government prior to that was a weak confederation. Why? Because the states didn't want to give up their sovereignty and their power. And so they knew that they had to create a stronger federal government.
The Articles of Confederation were too weak.
Correct. They had to create a stronger federal government, one that still left the ultimate power in the hands of the states. That's what this was. And that was the United States Senate. So all the senators were appointed by the states. And of course, they were there to do one thing: protect the rights of the state. And which means what? That means it was not easy to expand the power of the federal government into the purview of the states.
Yes.
Because you had a body there in the United States Senate, and they made it doubly hard, not just because they were appointed, but to make sure that states had ultimate say. They created rules in the Senate that prior to 1917, in order to get a bill considered, you just saw the one big beautiful bill get passed.
I got a question on it, but yeah.
And one of the key vote was the motion to proceed. In other words, to bring the bill up to be voted on.
Okay.
So you have to vote to bring it up, and then you vote on the bill. And so that was created way back when, a motion to proceed. And in the United States Senate, up until 1917, in order to proceed to the bill, every senator had to agree.
Whoa. That must have made it hard for things to go through. Yeah.
And as a result, the
states were then able to basically prohibit
one state could block
federal action. Wow.
So you look at all the things, you look at the size of the federal government prior to 1916 or 17. It was incredibly small.
Yes.
Washington literally was a backwater town. The only thing that Washington ever did, or the federal government ever did, was defend the country, defend the borders, and deal with interstate and international commerce and foreign affairs. That was it.
Right. Defined properly as opposed to using interstate commerce for everything.
They would admit states because that's something they had to do. I mean, so it was the things that Congress passed were things that they had to pass.
Yes.
You know, you look at all of the great legislation, not a whole lot of it, but if you look at it, it were things that there was an overwhelming need and a public outcry to do something. That's how they passed. That's when they passed things. So, and you'd say, well, how did they get everybody to agree? Well, the way they did it was that if you wanted something that I was against and I wanted something that you were against, and I was going to block your vote and you were going to block my vote. Okay, we'll make a deal. I'll let you vote if you let me vote. So that's how things happen. There was barter and exchange, and that's how things eventually got to be a vote. But it was really difficult. And as a result, the federal government was really small. What happened in 1912 was, if you recall, what movement was ascendant in the late 1800s and the early 1900s? The progressive movement, right? You saw the Midwest populist progressives who came forward, folks like La Follette and also the labor unions and others. That was all part of this big progressive, Woodrow Wilson, all part of this progressive movement that had seized America as a backlash against the Industrial Revolution and you were mentioning to me in our conversation about the woolen mill. The textile mills around it, and how robber baron capitalism was really a horrible thing. Pope Leo coming forward with Rerum Novarum. This was a real problem. And the progressives rallied together and captured the imagination of the American public for a while, until they, like they are now, go too far, right? Yeah. Well, one of the things they were able to accomplish was the 17th Amendment, to get rid of the popular election of senators, because they knew as long as the Senate was in control of the states, they would never be able to grow the size of the federal government.
Wow.
And so what happened was the media, the muckrakers, remember the term muckraker?
No.
From high school?
No.
I did. No, they don't teach that in high school anymore. But muckrakers were yellow journalists. Okay. They were called muckrakers or yellow journalists. And this was a big thing back in the late, and they would go out and they would print all this scandalous stuff. Well, the principal focus for quite a while of the muckrakers or yellow journalists were the state legislatures. They were corrupt. They were selling these senators. They were doing just all of this mostly fabricated stories to create a buzz and a willingness for the people to amend the Constitution and get rid of the United States Senate.
Wow.
And so that's what they did. And as a result, 1912, the 17th Amendment passed, popular election of senators. 1/3 of the Senate's up in 1914. Another third of the Senate's up in 1916. So in 1917, now that 2/3 of the Senate's popularly elected, what do? They change the rules. Now it's not unanimous consent. It's not everybody has to agree. They put in a rule called the cloture rule.
Oh, yeah.
And the cloture rule was a reform to make it easier for things to pass, not make it harder. And so they put in a rule saying that 2/3 of the Senate had to vote for it, not everybody. And so as a result of that, there was a move during the Wilsonian time to grow the size of the federal government. The last years, it was not just World War I, but also because of the pandemic and other things, that the federal government began to grow. And there was now incredible pressure, and in comes Calvin Coolidge. Harding, but not for long, Coolidge. And in a time when there was a huge move that eventually led to Roosevelt, there was this underlying move to try to transform the federal government. Coolidge held firm.
Held the line. Wow. Because I've the little bit I've studied about him is how he said no to a lot of things. Yes. And one of his famous quotes is, if everyone sat down and shut up, the world would be a lot better, or something like that. Yeah. So that's fascinating. I got to learn more about the 17th Amendment.
That was the transformational amendment in American history.
I don't know how I didn't know that. The 10th Amendment, as I guessed, it's pretty important.
It is, but it's not as important as the 17th.
Wow. Okay. Good. That's awesome. Best American history book that you've read?
Oh, I like Bill Bennett's book.
Oh, okay. All right.
We taught that. That's what we use for our kids.
Nice. Okay. Trying to remember the title of it. The Big Book of Virtue.
No. He had a book on American history.
American history.
Yeah, he wrote American history book.
I can't remember the title.
I wish I could remember the name of it.
Yeah. What was the virtue book he wrote?
Yeah, the Children's Book of Virtues, and then the Book of Virtues.
Yeah, right. Okay.
It was originally the Book of Virtues and then the Children's Book of Virtues.
Right. Okay. This is a weird one. If you had to be in an 8-hour road trip with a Democratic senator from your time in the Senate, who would it be? And you can't say Joe Lieberman.
Well, Joe Lieberman was a friend of mine. We actually
you can't say that.
We actually served on the Armed Services Committee. I was the ranking member and/or as chairman, mostly chairman, and he was my ranking member on every subcommittee that I served on for 8 years. So we became friends, went to his funeral, and he was a really good man.
Yeah.
Didn't agree with him on a lot of things.
Sure. But I knew that you guys were like friends.
Yeah.
So.
The other person I would say would be Daniel Patrick Moynihan.
Really?
He was a very interesting man. Had a lot of experiences and was a delightful guy to hang around with.
Okay, good. If you were teaching 8th grade civics class, what's the first thing you'd make them memorize?
Oh, well, parts of the Declaration of Independence. The most important, it is the birth, in a sense, the birthright of our country is in the Declaration. I mean, the Constitution is a great document, but the Declaration is a more important document because it sets the framework as to how the relationship between the people and the government. And, to memorize 2 sections of the Declaration of Independence. One is the one you probably know: we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, among them life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And the second is the last sentence of the Declaration.
Which I couldn't tell you what it is. I don't know.
No? Okay.
No, sorry.
And I'm now I got to hold it back. It said,
so help us God? I don't know. Something like that.
But it ends with this: we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortune, our sacred honor. But there is a clause before that which I'm not going to get right, so I'm not going to try it. Right. But
Kevin's looking it up here.
Look it up.
You got it, Kevin?
And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection
of divine providence. There it is. That's it. That's to each other.
Our lives, our fortunes, and our
and to me, the most important thing about that is that, first off, they did. Many of them died. Many of them, almost all of them, lost everything. But you noticed it was really interesting is that they didn't, they said on the reliance of divine providence, but they didn't swear to God. What did they do? They mutually pledged to each other. You say, well, why would they do that? Wouldn't they, take an oath and say, but no, when you're in the foxhole, you're there fighting for the guy next to you. They were in a foxhole.
Yeah.
They were in the middle of a battle and which they had just signed their own death warrants. And so this was a band of brothers.
Yes.
And it was a brotherhood of mutual commitment that swearing to God is obviously very important, but in the heat of the moment, you're fighting for the guy next to you.
Yeah.
And that's what showed me how this was not esoteric. This was, we're in the foxhole.
You just mentioned Band of Brothers, and I was going to ask and then dropped it, and then I said, okay,
I had the privilege of getting to know Dick Winters.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I tried.
He was a very successable businessman after, I think
he did well. Yeah. He lived in Hershey, Pennsylvania.
Oh,
and,
okay. That's how.
He was someone who, some people came to me who were friends of his and wanted Dick to get the Medal of Honor because he never did. And they came to me and said, is there any way you can help? And so I made it a passion of mine to try to get Dick Winters after Band of Brothers came out, and I learned more about him and got to meet him and spend some time with him to try to get him the Medal of Honor. And I'll never forget the Secretary of the Army coming to me and coming to my office with the answer. He didn't want to send me the answer. He wanted to, and he just said, there is no one I would want to go to battle with as my commanding officer other than Dick Winters. He was the best. He was this, he was that. He said, but he just doesn't meet the criteria. He did brave things, but he didn't meet the exact language, which is to, to put your body in harm's way and all. And there's a certain criteria, and he just doesn't meet it. Yeah. He was a great commanding officer, but he didn't meet it. And I remember going to him, and he was like, he was saying, I didn't push this for myself. I know others wanted me to, but I'm perfectly fine. But anyway, he was a great man.
Well, I was going to ask, what's your favorite movie about American history, but we can just say Band of Brothers.
There are a lot of great movies about, I love Band of Brothers, but the movie that, I love Saving Private Ryan.
Oh gosh. Yeah.
just no other movie moves me like that
I thought you might
when
say.
I think about it.
I thought you were going to say the John Adams series.
That was a great series. I mean, there's so many. I mean,
I know. But like John Adams, like you cite him, you got a quote by him somewhere in here.
Our Constitution was made for a moral, religious people that's wholly inadequate for the governance.
You got it. I mean, that's powerful. And I've read a lot of books on John Adams. His letters with his wife. It's amazing.
No,
but where's all the monuments in Washington D.C. to him? He's underrated, man. Like
because nobody liked him.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, there's something to
there's something to that.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not liked,
a lot of people didn't like you.
Any monuments to me in Washington?
No, there should be.
No, there aren't. There never will be, and that's okay. I mean, sometimes you got to, like I said, do the right thing for the right reason. Don't worry about the consequences.
Yeah.
And he did. And I don't.
I'm not sure anybody did more to prepare this country for, its founding than him. I mean, Jefferson gets too much credit.
But he was an irascible, unlikable person from everything you read.
I think I read something like he was in the Oval Office or what? Maybe it was the Oval, because I think it was the first one that actually went into the White House, right?
I think that's right.
And so he threw his wig down and like stomped on it. And, he was like, he threw temper tantrums,
Yeah.
But he was a religious man.
Yes.
And, he was a very prayerful man, extremely. You probably know this. I have no reason to tell Rick Santorum U.S. history trivia stuff, but this is cool. So I also read a book on his son, John Quincy Adams, which is fascinating. So this is fascinating. John Quincy Adams served in Washington's cabinet, for lack of a better word, and in Congress with Abraham Lincoln.
That's correct.
It's unbelievable. I mean, think about that. He spent, because he was like...
Well, he was a kid.
He was like 14.
Yeah, he was a kid.
And he was essentially like the ambassador, to Russia.
Correct.
Or what, right?
Yeah.
Which is a great story of how that happens. Abigail must have been infuriated with John for like letting him go off by himself to Russia.
Yeah, I mean, it's also incredible to think that he was elected president of the United States and then went back and ran for Congress.
And I think he
died. He died in Congress.
So I think we can say he was the first president ever photographed. Now, because he was photographed as like 85 years old or something when he was in Congress, but he was the first president, right? You see what I'm saying?
I see.
So I think he was the first president
that we have a
photograph of, even though it was like 50
the earliest
years,
president,
50 years. The earliest, that's the way to say it. But that was kind of just an interesting whole story. But
and then you saw, he was if you saw the movie Amistad, which is a great movie.
A long time ago. About the slave ship?
Yeah.
Was it? Yeah, I have to go
back
and watch that.
He was the lawyer.
Oh, that's
that defended that.
You're right.
Yeah.
I have got to watch that again.
Quincy Adams is an incredibly fascinating life.
Yeah. So, okay, sorry.
That nobody knows about.
No, you're right. Maybe.
I mean, I wrote a book called American Patriots, and it's actually a book of little vignettes about all the people that we used to learn about who were famous at one point in time in American history that we don't learn about anymore. And you read the stories of these people and what they did to get the founding and realize that these names were household names, many of them, and now no one knows who they are.
Yeah.
And it's because we don't teach the founding.
Yeah.
And we don't understand who we are as a country. And if you don't know who you are, it's hard to know where you're going.
Right. Well, okay, let's that's enough rapid fire. I was going to ask, the opening question is like this. I was going to say, how is your vision for the country similar to Donald Trump's, President Trump's, I should say. But then kind of late in my preparation, as in this morning, because I was reading all of this history about you for days, preparing. And it was this morning, a friend of mine who you're going to meet tonight at dinner. I learned about the Convention of States.
Yeah.
And somehow I didn't catch on to that until this, because my buddy said, you got to check this out.
So I do.
So my opening question is like an umbrella question, okay? Because we're going to talk about the definition of conservatives, liberals, where are we? We're going to talk about a lot of issues, but this is a project that you're working on. Tell us about the Convention of States.
Yeah, it's really it's an Article 5 of the Constitution provides two ways to amend the Constitution. One is the way it's been amended for 27 times, and there have been 27 amendments to the Constitution. For those who don't know, but that's Congress proposes an amendment. it's sent to the states, and 3/4 of the state legislatures have to ratify. That's how we get constitutional amendments. But there's a second method that has yet heretofore been used. It has been attempted, I think, 300 or 400 times, but never has it gotten to the point where the states, which is the second provision, the state legislatures can pass resolutions calling for a convention of states to meet and propose amendments to the Constitution. And that convention is limited by the scope of the resolution that's passed. So, for example, the states could pass a resolution saying we want to debate amendments on term limits of Congress. So if 34 states, you need 2/3 of the states, just like you need 2/3 of the Congress to propose an amendment, you need 2/3 of the state legislatures. The governor's not involved. It's just the legislatures. And the reason was the founders wanted the states to be powerful. They wanted to be the ultimate check on Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
And so they put this provision in. It was actually one of the last provisions put into the Constitution. They put this in as another check. They already had the Senate, but they thought, well, just in case, we're going to put this in here to make sure that the states can still check the federal government if the federal government gets out of control. It's a high bar. It's hard to do. It's the hardest thing to do in the country is to amend the Constitution, as well it should be. And therefore, if you look at the constitutional amendments that have passed so far, they've all been overwhelmingly popular, with the exception of not reconciliation. I've got reconciliation on my mind. After World War. After the Civil War. So Reconstruction. I'm thinking I got reconciliation on my brain from the One Big Beautiful Bill over the past year. Okay. So that's what's in my mind. But yeah, Reconstruction, not reconciliation. Reconstruction. And those amendments were passed when the Republicans had appointed Republicans sitting in the southern seats. Mm-hmm. So they had, in a sense, control of the South. The Democrats weren't. We had Republican senators from Mississippi and Alabama and all that. That's when those amendments were proposed, and they controlled the legislatures also. So it was somewhat of a bum's rush to get those through, but such as the spoils of war, right?
Right.
So with the exception of those, every other constitutional amendment had overwhelming popularity in the United States. And so it would be here. So in order to have the legislatures come together and propose amendments, there'd have to be a pretty broad consensus as to what those amendments would be to get a convention called and to then propose amendments and have those amendments be voted on. So here's how the process would work. 34 states. And what I'm working on currently is a proposal that allows for 3 types of amendments to be proposed. One is to limit the terms of federal office holders. It's very broadly written, so it could mean Congress, it could mean executive branch employees,
judges.
It could be judges,
wow.
Right? So it's a broadly written thing and to me, the most important is some of these executive branch appointments, the quote deep state.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So that's one. Number 2 is a resolution that allows for fiscal restraints. So anything that would come into the category of a fiscal restraint on Washington, like a balanced budget amendment or a tax limitation amendment or a light on a veto or, anything that gives power to Washington, over Washington to limit spending, okay, or limit taxation would be permitted to be debated and offered as an amendment to the Constitution. And third is to limit the jurisdiction of the federal government. So it would say you can no longer legislate in the area of education.
Right.
Right. Now, in the Constitution, they do not have the right to educate in the area of legislation.
That's what the 10th Amendment would handle, right?
But it doesn't.
But it does anyway.
And so you'd have to have something that's much more specific that directs the court to limit their jurisdiction.
Would that basically be an amendment saying the 10th Amendment's real?
No, it would be an amendment that would, I think, specifically prohibit certain federal activities.
It would actually list them specifically. Yeah. Okay.
But the 10th Amendment is real. I mean, one of the things that's possible is the problem with the 10th Amendment is that is who has standing to sue under the 10th Amendment. We're going to get in the weeds here, which I don't necessarily want to do. But the point is, these three things would be, to me, the best answer to what we gave away with the 17th Amendment. So it would allow the states and this to really assert themselves and do an intervention at the federal level. So far, 19 states have passed those three resolutions. We're working on several others right now, but we have to get to 34. So we got a ways to go yet.
So the resolution is like you're saying these are the topics that if we got 34, then we'd have a convention.
Every state would have
the specifics would then be fleshed out.
Every state would have one vote, and everyone would come forward with their own ideas as to what kind of limitations they're going to try to put on.
Okay, so like term limits, you haven't necessarily drafted the specifics of that. It would be done at the convention.
Yeah, the folks who would be appointed by the states, they would all likely be state legislators themselves, and they would be the ones who would actually debate that. And then once that is proposed, then it's got to go back to the state legislatures, and 38 states have to ratify. And what does that mean? What that means that nothing widely conservative or widely liberal has any chance. Right? Because there's certainly many more conservative states than there are liberal states. As you know, if you look at a map of the United States in a presidential election, it's almost all red. So there's no questions that this is a great forum for Republicans and for conservatives. But it's not a slam dunk because you only need 13 states to say no. And I can rip through 13 pretty blue states, and that means you got to get a blue state like a Maryland or New Mexico or something like that to vote yes if you have any chance of winning, which is not going to be easy to do.
All right. That kind of that leads to really what in one of your books you really write extensively about what is the heart, the definition, the essence of conservatism versus liberalism. And I think we're kind of bumping up against it, and it's the notion of bigness or smallness in a certain way. And so it's the concept of subsidiarity, speaking like a Catholic, right?
One of my chapters in the book is subsidiarity.
Yes. Yeah. So these intermediary institutions, such as a state legislature. I mean, you have churches, that's an intermediate institution, but also like a state legislature.
Local governments, etc.
No one can tell you who their local state legislatures are. It's a completely it's gone from our culture, right?
Well, because it's not important anymore.
Right.
I mean, all the power has been centrally located. And now if you have a problem with a neighbor's dog barking, you call your congressman. I mean, I know that because people did.
Wow.
When I was in Congress, I was in the United States Senate, I got calls from people saying, "Oh, my neighbor is, going, building a fence in my yard. What are you calling me for?" I mean, but that's what they think. I think all the power is there.
Right. So, why don't you kind of just roughly define for us what conservatism is and what liberalism is?
I use Russell Kirk's definition of conservatism, which is the stewardship of patrimony.
Yeah.
What does that mean? Well, we know stewardship. If you think about it, I always think of the steward of Gondor, right?
Yes.
It's the person who is in temporary charge until the king arrives. Well, we're waiting for the king. At some point, the king will come, and his will be done. But right now, we are stewards of this creation, and so the stewardship of patrimony. What's patrimony? Right? Is our history? Right? Is in my sense, it's a stewardship of the things that are good, that work, that lead to a good and healthy society. Chesterton said the democracy of the dead, which I kind of like. Okay. It kind of applies here. Similar thing, but we all have a patrimony. It's like, what do we stand for? What do we know is something that is good and decent and valuable that makes us who we are. Yes. And that's why conservatives historically have been woe to just change things for the purpose of changing things. That change is not necessarily better. That 2,000 years of Western civilization has given us a pretty good idea of what works and what doesn't. And socialism doesn't work. Communism doesn't work. And it's destructive of the human being. It's destructive of of our relationship with our creator. I mean, there's all sorts of destructive aspects to communism, much less just destructive of humankind, that we know doesn't work, and that we know that there are certain elements of American patrimony that have actually worked well to build a great and just and moral society. And we are just day by day giving it away and allowing it to be plowed over and built something completely new that isn't new, but is just repackaged to look new, and we encourage it. We encourage it through our government, through our universities, through every aspect of society. We encourage this destruction of the patrimony that has made America what it is.
I mean, tearing down statues. I mean, it's kind of like metaphorically and physically and literally, right?
Not teaching history, or teaching Howard Zinn's view of history, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is a Marxist view of history. I mean, the 1619 Project. You can go on and just look at how the popular culture and academia have systematically just dissembled American history and reconstructed into something that never existed. And as a result, we're now built on very, very flimsy foundations.
I don't want to ask it like that. I'm going to say, how would you describe Donald Trump in regards to conservatism? I mean,
Donald Trump is a change agent. He's a destructive force. That doesn't mean he can't be constructive. But the whole reason Donald Trump got elected was that I know this sounds immodest, and probably is because the Republican Party, Republican primary voters, saw them shove John McCain down their throats when they really wanted Mike Huckabee, and they saw them shove Mitt Romney down their throats when they wanted Rick Santorum, and they weren't going to let it happen again.
Yeah,
and so they wanted someone who could blow it up. They just said, we don't trust the establishment.
Yeah.
We want someone from the outside who's beholden to nobody, who has ties to anybody, to just blow it up.
And they were tempted to go with Ron Paul, but they knew he couldn't pull it off. Right? I mean, is that fair?
Yeah, well,
but there's something about that kind of made people attracted. I mean, clearly young people found him attractive in some way.
Because he was a libertarian, and libertarians don't believe in morality. They believe or they don't believe in public morality. They believe that individuals can be their own moral compass.
Yes.
And therefore you should be able to do whatever you want.
No, I'm not a libertarian.
I'm just saying, but if you're a young person, that's you can't. Yeah. And that's why I had bigger battles with Ron Paul than I did with Mitt Romney, right? Because his fundamental, he and you see this with Thomas Massey and Rand Paul, who vote with the left more than they vote with conservatives. Why? Well, because the left believes that government is all good and can be perfected, that humans can run government in a way that's perfected, and therefore everything should be collectivized. Libertarians believe that the individual is all good and that you don't need government because all you just need to do is let people go ahead and live their good lives. And conservatives know that man is fallen and broken and needs faith and needs virtue and needs moral laws and needs codes and needs ethics to create a foundation in people, and in conscience, and formation of their conscience, and laws and ethics that lead people to a higher good, but also to have constraints on them, right?
Yes.
And libertarians don't believe that, and the left doesn't believe it. So we're sort of alone here.
Aristotle in Politics, he talked about how there is a temptation to think that the only purpose of government was to protect my rights against your rights. And he debunks that. Yeah. We're talking 200 BC, right? I mean, 300 BC.
Freedom from.
Yes. And he says, the purpose of government is to help lead the citizenry towards the good.
Freedom for.
Yeah. I mean, so they figured out this
a
long time ago.
Your listeners know what I mean, but it's freedom from is the freedom from any kind of constraints. And then you have freedom for, which is the freedom to do
the good.
I always, I give a talk on this when I talked about memorizing the Declaration of Independence, when I first really started focusing on this phrase, I focused on the last word of that quote, because the last word of that quote is right. Remember, it's holds true to yourself and all of it, created. I'm down by the creator, certain rights, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And so I always thought, well, first off, they're ordered for a reason. Can't have liberty without life. Can't have happiness without liberty, right? So that makes sense, okay? And I get life, clearly an intrinsic right. Liberty, clearly an intrinsic right. Happiness. Where is the right to be happy?
Wow,
interesting. And so I sort of thought because that the original was property, life, liberty, and property.
Benjamin Franklin, I think,
right,
changed
and
it, right?
they changed it to happiness or pursuit of happiness. And I thought, well, okay, it's the pursuit of happiness, so it's really life, liberty, and the pursuit. But happiness, it sounds so trite, right? Hey, I'm happy. Here's lies Rick Santorum. He was happy. I mean, no one would say that was a great epitaph, right? So I went back and actually looked at what was at the time the closest contemporary definition of happiness and read a lot about it. And the closest contemporary definition was Webster's first dictionaries, came out 20 or 30 years after that happened. And one of I think was the second definition of happiness is to do something like to do what God called you to do.
Wow.
So they understood true happiness, as any Catholic would tell you. You are a slave to sin, right? Happiness can never happen if you are sinning, right? Because that leads to death. And so the only way you lead to happiness is to do God's will.
They understood teleology.
Yes. Right?
Yeah.
And so to them, it wasn't happiness in the way we think of happiness.
Yes.
It was happiness in pursuing God's will in your life.
I love that. Aristotle, when his Greek word was oidaimonia, which we translate, all the translations in the Ethics go to happiness, okay? But a better definition is wholeness or completeness. His oidaimonia was that was the ultimate goal of man during this life, which was completeness or wholeness. And I think that's kind of related to what you're saying, is the founding father had a sense of happiness, not just like they feel good.
Right.
Maybe we talk about happiness, but it was a completion, true happiness,
yes.
A completion of who you are because of what you're called to be.
And so to me, it's important. Like, you can memorize things, but you also have to contextualize what you're memorizing.
Yes,
right? Just like the church does with the Bible.
No, I love that. I love that. So when we were kind of just talking about the definition of liberalism, and in your book, it takes a family. I almost said it takes a village.
I wrote it.
I know.
I wrote it.
Actually, go ahead. Explain
I wrote it in response to Hillary Clinton's "It Takes a Village."
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it was a prescription for the government to basically raise your family.
Yes.
And I said, no, families need to raise family,
Yes.
and so that's why I wrote the counter.
This book, I mean,
20 years old, 21 years old.
That's hard to believe. I have it on the Kindle. I wish I had the physical to show people, but It Takes a Family. Look, this could be it's almost like a constitutional textbook without feeling like it at all. I mean that in a good way, because you just go through the fundamentals of our country all through the lens of family.
Yeah.
There's so much in there, but on page 13, you define liberalism. It is the freedom to be and do whatever we want, freedom to choose irrespective of the choice, freedom without limit.
Yeah.
And I love how you talk about the village elders.
Yes.
It's great. And it's that social elite.
Yes.
In big business and big government. And we're kind of all tired of it. And that's where people, we're skeptical, we're frustrated, we feel like we've been kept in the dark. That deep state you talk about, but you call them like the village elders. In response to Hillary's village.
Yeah, right.
Anyway, so I just think that's kind of brilliant. And the ultimate goal for them is to have, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it's total control. And the way they do that is they get rid of the notion of subsidiarity, right? I mean, they get rid of those intermediate.
As I say in the book, I mean that at the time that I was talking, early 2000s, what had happened, that was one of the reasons that was the premise of the book, was that for the first time in my lifetime, and for probably over 100 years, there was a transformation in one of the power centers in America. So if you look at the powerful institutions in America, obviously the government is one. The bureaucracy has been controlled by the left for a long, long time. Number two is the media, right? The news media, the Hollywood media, right? Our schools, our universities, our labor unions. If you look at all of these major institutions in American life who are hugely influential in the formation of our society. I mean, I forget who said it, but some old philosopher said, give me the storytellers and I will control the country in a generation. Well, they have the storytellers, they have the teachers, they have the professors, they have the government, they have their labor. I mean, they had everything.
They're telling stories through all those.
And everybody's educating, telling story, informing that generation. And in the late 1990s and early 2000s, another institution flipped: business. Business used to be conservative, used to be industrial, and was spread throughout the country. You had people who were self-made men and women, mostly men, who built these things and believed in capitalism and therefore invested in, and they were disseminated across the country. What's happened is the urbanization of our population, and the in the technology revolution, the coastal realignment, that all of the wealth is being created on our coasts. And of course, all the people who live in urban coastal cities are not us, right? And they're the ones getting wealthy. They're the ones who are controlling businesses. They're the ones who've been educated by our top universities, and they are now left. It's the Zuckerbergs. It's the it's the Bezos. It's gone down the list.
Yeah.
And by the way, it's thousands of people under them who have all become millionaires and billionaires.
Yes.
It's not just, it's the concentration of wealth in this new information technology age has been enormous. And the amazing thing is, the people who complain about concentration of wealth is the left, and it's the left who the wealth has been concentrated in. Okay? It's not the right. There are very few of us who have made our fortunes in technology, because you basically don't get hired in technology if you think like us.
Right.
So I wrote this thinking, okay, all that's left, because big business was important. They had money, they had influence, they had power, they had some power over the media because of advertising. But now with in a sense, the decentralization of power and the beginning at the time that I wrote it of the internet and social media and all this thing, it was just starting to come online, but I could sort of see what was going to happen. I said, there's only two things left that are conservative. And if I know anything about the left, they hate competition.
Yeah.
They like the power and they like control. So they're going to destroy these two institutions. And I laid out the two institutions that they were going to destroy, and they were the family and the church.
Yeah.
And I said the way they, and of course the way they were going to do it was, number one, undermine marriage.
Yes. Right?
They were going to destroy the institution of marriage. And by destroying it and confusing our children, and with gay, and I'm not even sure, I haven't read my book recently whether I even talk about trans, and maybe that would be beyond.
You have a line in there where you say the left is trying to, I could pull it up, but you say the left is trying to change the definition of marriage, of life, of gender.
Oh, okay.
You said gender.
Yeah, I did.
And this is 20 years ago.
Yeah. 20.
So I was like, dude, you're being a prophet.
No, I mean, I have a gift, okay? And my gift is this. When people tell me they're going to do something, I believe it. And, whether it was abortion, I mean, they're going to tell me they're going to do it. And with marriage, they're going to do it. With gender, they're going to do it. I mean, because it's just logically flows, right? It's this whole idea. It's absolute freedom. I can be a man. I can be a woman. I can be whatever I want to be. That's why I use that definition, because I sort of saw it coming.
Yes.
I can be a cat.
Yeah.
Right?
Now people think they are.
Yeah. Furries. Yeah. Right. I mean, you say,
my kids told me that maybe a year ago, and I'm sitting there saying, I thought they were punking me.
No.
It's a real thing.
No, my point is, but there is no limit.
Okay, can I tell you something insane? There is a real story about a school that put litter boxes in the bathroom.
I know.
I mean, what do you say to? You can't argue with this.
Well, you can argue with it. I mean, you must argue, and that's the point.
You're right.
The point is, and I make the point in the book, is we didn't.
Yeah, you're right.
We didn't fight gay marriage. We didn't fight. Now
you did.
I did, but I got my handed to me, right? But it didn't matter. I mean, I continue to fight. I mean, the idea that a society takes the institution of marriage, which is, as I defined it very clearly in the book and everywhere else, is an institution created by God to bind men and women together in a healthy home in which to have and raise children, to honor and love and serve Him. That's what marriage is. It is not the real, the love between two people.
Right.
If that's the case, then I should be able to marry my aunt or my kids.
Right.
But that's not what marriage is. Right. Marriage has a specific role in society, and society has to honor that and respect it. And when you don't, you get less of it. And guess what we have now? Less marriage. I predicted that in the book. I said we're going to get a lot fewer people married. And guess what? Marriage rates have plummeted. And birth rates have plummeted.
Actually, I was going to talk about that. So you, in your book, you have you talk about fertility rates that are plummeting, and you were ahead of your time on that. Okay, because now that's become
the biggest problem
Jordan Peterson's made a big deal of it, but you talked about it 20 years ago.
It's the biggest problem I've had in my career is I've always been ahead of my time.
You get the stats from all the different countries, and it's like 1.5 versus 1.4, and you show how many countries have just fallen below the self-replication level. Yeah. And that has proven in the last 20 years, the statisticians know we have a serious problem. Yeah. Like Europe has a serious problem. We got a problem. The only reason our population goes up is because of immigration. Yeah. So no one was talking about this 20 years ago.
As much as people are concerned about immigration, I am too. And I, as you know, was a very strong fighter against illegal immigration and still am. I am not against legal immigration, and I'm certainly not against legal immigration from people in Central and South America.
Right.
I have more problems when it comes to people from Algeria and Morocco and Pakistan. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'll just be honest. Mm-hmm. And you say, wow, that's, xenophobic or whatever. No, there's certain cultures that fit with the United States and there's other cultures that don't. Go to Dearborn and find out what I mean. If you don't think, or go to London and find out how things are in London. There is that culture is not our culture. And that's why you're seeing what's going on in Europe is that thankfully we have Mexico on our southern border, not Algeria, right? And not Morocco and not Libya. The reality is those two cultures, the Muslim culture and the Western culture, have been at war for 1,300 years.
Yeah.
And why? Because they are foundationally different. That doesn't mean there aren't good Muslim people. I have some good Muslim friends. But I don't want a majority Muslim country because it will not be a free America, period. It will not. No majority Muslim country has freedom. None.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember I went to London. I think I was just early college. And then I went to it like 20 years later, and it was a different country. I mean, I thought I was in Saudi Arabia.
I'm telling you.
The second time I thought I was in Saudi Arabia.
I hate to say this, but if Muslims are a small part of the population, no problem. I mean, generally speaking, there's an assimilation that occurs. But once they get a large footprint, it's a problem. I mean, it just is. You can say anything you want about me. I don't really care. I'm just telling you what the facts are. That's what happens. And if that's what you want for America, fine, then open the doors. But if you want America to keep its values, which I certainly have been fighting for all my life, then that's one of the things you have to limit.
Let's just change topics to like one of those areas that you fought for really hard. I just want to get to the partial birth abortion before the episode goes too far, because this is one of my favorite things about the Rick Santorum story. So in a lot of ways, you are synonymous with traditional values in politics, but in particular, your courageous fight over many years. It took many years to finally get the partial birth abortion ban. And we're going to show a clip. I think maybe we'll just show the clip first because I counted it. Now there's 7 words that I want to zoom in on. And when you say these particular 7 words, you say it, anyone who is just watching you, can know what passion and zeal, holy zeal, you were bringing to this. You got the clip, Kevin. Go ahead.
Some have likened this chart to a depiction of an appendicitis operation. My God. Appendicitis. That's not an appendix. That's not a blob of tissue. It is a baby. It's a baby.
Pause there, please. So we'll keep going, but the 7 words, it is a baby. It's a baby.
And you may not know the story.
We're gonna get to the cry.
Okay, go ahead.
We're gonna get to the cry.
Happened right there.
I know, and if when we keep playing, you'll be able to hear it. But I just want to pause there because, Kevin, rewind it like 10 seconds.
The person, Senator Chuck Robb from Virginia, got up and made the comment after I had presented these drawings of a baby being born all but the head. And what you see is a pair of forceps.
Yes.
That are thrust into the base of the baby's skull. They take a vacuum tube and they suck the baby's brains out, clapping the skull and then delivering the rest of the baby.
Yes.
That's how they did this. And it was horrific. And I described it. I couldn't put real pictures up but I could put drawings. And then the senator from Virginia got up and said, well, if I described any medical technique, it would be gory and it would be bloody and it would be horrible. And, if I described an appendectomy, and that's why you said the appendectomy. Yeah, it's powerful. I just want people to hear one more time when you say it is a baby, it's a baby, and the way you say it. And then we're going to keep going. And I want people to listen out for when you get to the point about hearing the cry of the unborn, and when you can hear a baby wailing in the background. Go.
Appendicitis. That's not an appendix. That's not a blob of tissue. It is a baby. It's a baby. Did you ever really think that this could actually be happening on the floor of the United States Senate? When you came here and there are people in the audience who maybe are just visiting Washington, who just sort of wandered in, did you actually believe that we could be actually contemplating allowing thousands of these kinds of procedures to continue? I sometimes just have to sit here and pinch myself and wonder whether this is all real. Whether this really is the United States of America.
I'll really hear the baby scream now.
A senator from California said she hears the cries of the women outside this chamber. We would be deafened by the cries of the children who are not here to cry because of this procedure.
Providence, man.
So
Providence.
What happened there, and I at the time I didn't really hear the baby. I was so in my zone. Yeah. I didn't hear the baby crying, and those words about we'd be deafened by the cries of baby had nothing to do with me hearing anything. Okay, it just came to me, or maybe it was. But what happened, and that's the amazing thing is, before the baby starts to cry, I think, or right about the time, I talk about how people could come here and they come to the gallery and they can see this. And again, I talked earlier in the last show about how God just beat me over the head and made sure I understood how real he was and how present he was in my life. And when I said those lines about that, I remember looking up, and you saw me looking up a few times. There was a reporter there while this was going on, and I'm saying these lines, and he's hearing the baby cry, and he stands up, and he's looking around, because obviously there's no baby on the floor of the Senate. In the gallery, I didn't know this, but I found out after that day that you can't bring a child into the gallery of the United States Senate until they're 5 years old. So there are no babies.
You never hear a baby cry.
I've never in my entire life in the Senate heard a baby cry. And yet here he is, and I'm saying, and so what happened was there was a family with a baby from London who were here visiting, and the baby was in the hallway upstairs outside the gallery. And at the time I'm saying this about people coming from all over to come here, the door to the gallery opens by where the baby outside was crying, and the door was left open long enough for her to hear that cry that entire time, and then the door closed and the baby's cry was gone. And I didn't find that out, but you can look it up. There's a Washington Post story on it, and it's actually beautifully written. I mean, it was beautifully written. And he said he said, he quoted me. He said, almost impossibly, he says, the cry of a baby could be heard. He said when something like, in a moment where the desk of the Senate seemed too small it was just this beautiful way he framed the thing. And this is a reporter for the Washington Post who was not one of us.
Right.
But everybody who was there was, you couldn't help but be moved by what had happened. And again, God blesses us.
It's not a coincidence. It just can't be. It just can't be.
No,
this is like, an ink pen exploding and producing a poem on paper. It's just stupid to think that would just happen.
No, it was a divine moment. And
it was
one of many.
And I listened to that clip like many times. I played it for my wife this morning. Hey, thanks guys for checking out the Conor Gallagher Show. Please take a moment to like, subscribe, or comment, or whatever you got to do to support it. And I appreciate that very much. People have made pro-life arguments on the floor before, and there'll always be something, but you were chosen by God at that moment for a reason, and you did it so passionately. What was going on in how much of that, it's a baby, how much of this was scripted versus, you were just, generally prepared, but you just had to let it rip when you were there?
I never write anything.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't write any of my speeches. And so when I would go out and give speeches or do debates, I'd sometimes bring a note or two if I, make sure I cover or maybe mention somebody. But the only thing I'd ever bring on a piece of paper consistently is I just write the words HS at the top of the page.
Holy Spirit.
That's it. And every time I say the creed and he has spoken through the prophets.
Oh, wow.
That's the line I just.
Yeah, that's awesome.
You want to be a prophetic voice. That's if you have the voice, what else are you going to use it for?
This is probably impossible to answer, but was that what we just saw? Was that this is not the right word, greatest moment or most significant moment, most important moment in your political career? There's you won Iowa caucus. I could see others, but that must hold a very special spot in your heart somehow.
Yeah. That whole, I know that maybe that moment certainly was a moment. You probably know this other story. It wasn't that year, but it was 2 years later. We're going through the same thing and trying to get the override. And the story about the student.
No, I don't remember that.
Okay,
Sorry.
so,
yeah, please. A person that wrote you a letter?
Yeah.
Yes. It was in your book. I know what you're talking about now.
Okay.
Because you felt like you failed, but then you saw that you really had to tell a story. Beautiful.
So this was after if you're going to play the Barbara Boxer quote where I talk about the toe and everything.
Yeah, I am.
So it was after that. It was
Okay.
that day.
Oh, yeah.
So it was that day we went through this debate. We had 6 hours to debate on the floor of the Senate.
Which you had to skip dinner at home. You said I got to stay.
Well, we agreed to 6 hours debate, 3 on each side. And I always say, debating Barbara Boxer 6 hours, I get time off in purgatory for that, for sure. And so we finished.
I got time off purgatory just watching her debate you. I did. It was painful.
It was like 8:00 at night, and what happens is we wrap up. And when you're managing the bill, which I was, the seat I was sitting in is the manager seat. That's where Mitch McConnell was, or John Thune is now. That's the manager seat. And so I was waiting for them to give me the script, because you just read a script and tells you what we're going to do the next day or whatever it is. And they're writing the script up, and I'm sitting there and I'm just overwhelmed with, I gotta say more. And we were up for overriding the president's veto. The House had overridden. We were 2 votes short. We knew we were 2 votes short. But I just felt like I needed to say more. And so I ran back to the cloakroom and I called Karen. And this was 1998. And so we had just had little Sarah in 97. And so I called, and she was crying, and it was like 8 o'clock, and she's trying to get the kids to bed. And I said, hey, we're wrapping up here, but I really feel like maybe somebody's watching, not, going to watch C-SPAN, or just, who doesn't have a life and they go home and watch C-SPAN as senators. But I just feel like I need to say something. And she said what she always said, which is, if that's what you feel called to do, that's what you got to do. And so, so I went back down to the floor, and Mike DeWine, who's now the governor of Ohio and was a colleague of mine, and he was sitting in the chair, and I went up to Mike and said, look, Mike, I know you're here for the end. I said, I'm only going to be a few minutes. Like an hour and a half later, I finish, and I get up there and I start talking about children who have written me and moms who have written me to talk about how they are devastated that Hillary Clinton and Dianne Feinstein, all these people are getting up saying, we have to keep this procedure legal to get rid of children with disabilities.
Yeah.
Basically, we can't have these Down syndrome kids and these spina bifida kids and all these other kids that, the parents should have a right to kill them, right? Because that's not what they want. And so I just felt like I needed to tell their story. And so I get up one after another. I had posters of them and just went through and told their stories and why they are worried about what the Senate's about to do. I thought maybe I could get to somebody that way. So I finished 2 hours, like an hour and a half, 2 hours later, went home. Everybody's asleep. Get up the next morning, as my habit was, to get up at 5:30 and leave and drive in. We had to vote the next morning. We lost by 2 votes. And I remember sitting there, obviously disappointed. And I remember walking out. You walk out of the Senate chamber and you walk through past the elevators. You walk out the door there on the second floor at the top of the Senate steps, and you're looking right at the Supreme Court. And so I remember looking over there and looking at the Supreme Court, which, gave us Roe versus Wade. And I just felt like a failure, that not only did I lose, but because of what I thought was what is my pride, that I could make a difference. I had another night where, my kids didn't have their dad say goodnight to them and tuck them in. My wife, went to bed alone, and I was a failure. Then the rest of the story is 2 days later, a person from my staff comes in with an email from a young man from Michigan State University. And he says, my girlfriend and I were sitting on the couch watching television, and we were clicking through all the channels, and we came across you standing there with a picture of a kid with, a disability. And we stopped to see what you were talking about. And we started listening to you make the arguments against partial birth abortion. And I noticed that I looked down at my girlfriend, and she had tears rolling down her cheeks. And I said to her, what's wrong? And she said, she paused and she looked at me and she goes, I'm pregnant. And I have an abortion scheduled for Friday. And I wasn't going to tell you. But I'm not going to have an abortion anymore. And he said, you may have lost your vote, but you saved the life of my child. And that little girl they went through a lot. Both their parents disowned them. They wanted them to have an abortion. They fought their parents and said they were going to get married. Ultimately, they decided not to get married, but she had the baby and gave the baby up for adoption. little girl. They called her Rebecca. I don't know what her name is, but that's what they called her. And so
Incredible.
I always tell people, when you go and you do things that you feel you're being called to do, and you're doing it, faithfully in accordance with God's will, you may lose. You may fail miserably. You may feel really bad. But that's just because you didn't get the email.
Wow, you didn't get the email. Wow.
Right? If I'd not gotten the email,
Yeah, you wouldn't know.
I wouldn't know. But how many times did we just didn't get an email? God doesn't let any of that go to waste.
Yeah.
It's just he doesn't.
That's unbelievable. It's just breathtakingly beautiful. I love that story. Let's now look at the debate with Barbara Boxer
Earlier that day.
Flashback, because this is the logic that you're employing. So here's my point. Rick Santorum is not just bringing his faith to bear. It's not just politics representing conservative side. You're bringing logic. You're bringing reason. You're bringing
faith and reason. And so
two wings. Right, two wings. Right, and so let's take a look at this debate where Barbara Boxer from California, right? California. She just
Marin County.
She absolutely refuses to define birth, and this is just a great exchange. Go ahead, Kevin.
When the baby is born and would then have every right of every other human being living in this country. And I don't know why this would even be a question, to be honest.
Because we're talking about a situation here where the baby is almost born. And so I would ask the question to the senator from California. If the baby was born except for the baby's foot, if the baby's foot was inside the mother, but the rest of the baby was outside, could that baby be killed?
The baby is born when the baby is born. That's the answer to the question.
I'm asking you to define
I don't think
for me
anyone
what
but
that
the
is.
senator from Pennsylvania has a question with it. I've never been troubled by this question. The baby, you give birth to a baby, the baby is there and it is born.
So if
That's
the baby,
my answer to the question.
What we're talking about here with partial birth, as the senator from California knows, is a baby in the process of being born. And yet there's
the process of being born
of the baby inside of the mother.
This is why this conversation makes no sense. Because to me, it's obvious when a baby is born. To you, it isn't obvious.
Well, maybe we can make it obvious to me. So what you're suggesting is if the baby's foot is still inside of the mother, that baby could then still be killed.
No, I'm not suggesting that in any way. I'm absolutely not suggesting that. You asked me a question.
Well,
in
I'm
essence,
asking
when the
you again.
baby is
Can
born,
you answer that
I will
question?
answer the question when the baby is born. The baby is born when the baby is outside.
It is funny. It is funny when you keep listening to it.
And I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but again, what you're suggesting then is that if the baby's toe is inside of the mother, you can in fact kill that baby.
Absolutely not.
Okay. So if the baby's toe is in, you can't kill the baby. How about if the baby's foot is in?
You're the one who's making these statements.
We're trying to draw a line.
I'm not answering these questions.
Is that almost it? I forget how long we planned. Yeah, it's right there. So the great part about it is this is a competent woman. She knows what she is not. She's doing this on purpose. That's what I'm saying. She's not missing it.
No.
She's not missing it. She knows what she's doing, and so. In fact, when you listen to the greater context of the debate, she says really dumb things. And she says like, well, the baby's born when I'm holding the baby in my arms.
Home from the hospital.
Yeah, she said that first. Yeah, when the baby's born when the baby's home from the hospital. And then you kind of challenge that. And then she says something about, well, when the baby's in my arms, because I gave birth. You didn't give birth. Right. I gave birth.
Yeah. You have no. So then she went on to attack me for
not being a woman.
For being a man.
Right. And so the baby's born when I'm holding it in my arms, and you're like, well, what about the physician's arms? The baby's born when the baby's born. It's unbelievable. If aliens from outer space were watching this, they would say this woman is mentally ill. There's just the logic is just absurd.
It's deception.
It's deception. That's what I'm saying. That's exactly what she knows. Exactly what she's doing.
She knows exactly what she's doing, and it succeeded. Remember the blob of tissue?
Yes.
Maybe simply just a blob. It's not really a human being. It's just a blob of cells. It's not human. And I mean the lies that the abortion industry went through and continues to go through to try to deceive people, make them feel comfortable. That's really all they're trying to do. They're just trying to make people feel comfortable with killing children.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to make people feel comfortable with killing children. You have to dehumanize the child.
Yeah, you have to.
I mean, that's the only way you do it. If that child is humanized, wanted, loved, you can't kill a puppy, but you can kill a baby. Right?
Well, and this gets into the more philosophical side of, Peter Singer, which you cite in your book, and I've read him. I taught about him when I was teaching philosophy at Belmont Abbey. This guy he was a tenured professor at Princeton, and he wanted to define a human as somebody who is self-conscious, like a sentient human who only has self-awareness. And so I think he famously said, a pig that's self-aware has more dignity than a 3-month-old baby.
Correct.
I mean, so he's in favor of infanticide.
Yes.
And this guy
is very clear about that.
This guy, it's not. And I saw a debate one time he had with a very severely disabled girl who mentally was all there, but physically she was and she was asking him, are you saying like my parents should have been able to kill me up to the age of 6 months? And he's like, yes. And he's not bashful about it all. It's unbelievable. So, he's a philosopher. He's talking about in philosophical terms, but they have bought into that.
Yeah. So I said the gift I have is I actually believe people when they say what they're going to do.
Yeah.
And look, we're heading down that.
That's what happened.
We're heading down that road. I mean, now we're doing it. We're approaching it very cleverly from the other side, which is assisted suicide, right? So now we're saying that. We're not going to go after little kids who were born as a burden. We'll go after people who we can convince are a burden to society to kill themselves. Right. Instead of actively trying to kill somebody.
And put it in phrase of put in the phraseology of freedom.
Mercy, of freedom, mercy, and all these types of things, right? And this is again, it's just it's the logical steps that they take. And 20 some years ago, I could see this.
You could see it coming.
And I didn't understand. To me, it just made so much sense. It was almost so self-evident. Yet for some reason, people didn't want to see it. It's not that they couldn't see it. I just
they're not.
I'm
that
not
dumb.
that smart.
Right.
I'm not that smart, and they're not that dumb.
Yeah.
Okay. They just chose for their own comfort not to believe it.
Let me ask you this. These people behind the scenes, off the camera. If you were sitting with Barbara Boxer in her office for a long time and talking about this, what would she say?
Same thing.
She just wouldn't go there. She just would not answer the question.
Maybe she would with somebody else. She wouldn't with me. She wouldn't give an inch.
Wow.
No. These are people who are a lot more committed to their cause and their faith than we are. I mean, that's why they win. They win because they're committed. We're not.
Next clip. This is just so I'm just I picked 3 clips that kind of show the pattern of the debate you had, right? So first it's a baby, and then the foot example.
Okay.
And now Senator Feingold, Russ Feingold. And this is
this
issue.
cost him his election. He almost lost his election because of this, and then ultimately it did get him.
Well, I'm glad, because eventually people have to understand, like, would these Democrat politicians really believe that it was okay to kill a baby that's completely and totally 100% separate from the mother?
You saw the governor of Virginia say a similar thing, right? Governor Northam a few years ago.
We will let doctors choose whether that's
decide.
a human with rights or not.
Exactly.
Hit the play.
Senator from Pennsylvania.
The senator from Wisconsin says that this decision should be left up to the mother and the doctor, as if there is absolutely no limit that can be placed on what decision that they make with respect to that. And the senator from California is going up to advise you of what my question is going to be, and I will ask it anyway. And my question is this: that if that baby were delivered breech style and the head everything was delivered except for the head, and for some reason that baby's head would slip out, that the baby was completely delivered, would it then still be up to the doctor and the mother to decide whether to kill that baby?
I would simply, Madam President, I would simply answer your question by saying, under the Boxer Amendment, the standard of saying it has to be a determination by a doctor of the health of the mother is a sufficient standard that would apply to that situation. And that would be an adequate standard.
That doesn't answer the question. Let's assume that this procedure
did answer the question, but I wanted it to be more specific.
And and the head is accidentally delivered, would you allow
The
the
time-
doctor to kill the baby?
So the question
senator from
simply say, I am
Wisconsin
not
has
the
the
person to
floor.
be answering that question. That is a question that should be answered by a doctor and by
I heard
a
you,
woman
yeah.
who receives
You
the
went,
advice
"Oh,
from a
man."
doctor. And neither I nor is a senator from Pennsylvania truly competent to answer those questions. That's why we shouldn't be making these decisions here on the floor of the
Right.
Senate.
So in other words, doctors now get to define what a human being is. Right?
Yeah, no, I mean,
That's what he says.
They get to decide who lives and who dies.
Who lives and who dies.
Right.
Right. I'm just saying
So,
that. Yeah.
so what they're saying basically is that if a woman wants an abortion, she has a right to a dead baby, no matter where the baby is. So if that's the case, then why can't you just kill your child? Period. Right? If you go in and say, I don't want my child anymore, I mean, then if it doesn't matter where the baby is in an abortion, the baby can be outside the mother. Then what prevents you from a mother after the baby's born saying, well, I really don't want the baby, you know, look, it's deformed, kill it.
Yeah.
Why not? And the answer is it should be up to the doctor and the mom.
Yes.
And that's what they believe. And because again, the whole point is it's the autonomy of self.
Yes.
It's I am the master of my own universe, and whatever is best for me is licit.
Which
right?
comes right from a Supreme Court case.
It does. The famous Anthony Kennedy, Catholic Anthony Kennedy.
You have the right at the core of liberty is the right to define your own
one's
universe.
concept of existence,
Yeah.
of the universe. I mean, literally, you have the right to define your own concept. I mean, how ridiculous is that?
Yeah.
You know, I define that red light is green and I can run it.
Yeah.
Right? That's my concept of reality and existence. It's chaos. And yet we have Supreme Court justices who actually say that.
Yes.
And guess what? In an abortion case, I mean, abortion is it is the toxin that poisons everything. I mean, it's child sacrifice.
Yes.
We are a society that is fully into child sacrifice. And I don't know what gods we're appeasing. I do know what God we're appeasing. You know what God we're appeasing? The God of self. That's the God that's the God that we are sacrificing to. The centrality of self, the centrality that you are in control of your own reality and nobody, including your child, can get in the way of that. And you can say, well, that's not as bad as the Aztecs. Isn't it?
Mm.
Isn't it? That you're doing it for just you. At least the Aztecs were doing it for society. At least they thought they were sacrificing to this Baal or whatever it was, because it helped society. This is just about you, not about society. It's about you. It's about what you want, and you don't care who gets in your way. Off them.
Yeah.
That is not a society that is going to be blessed.
Has the left overplayed their hand, and are people?
Yes.
Are
You have to say what they always overplay their hand. But here's the problem: they overplay their hand, and then society catches up.
Mm-hmm.
They overplay their hand. And you say, "Oh, that's it. They're done." It's sort of like Trump. You know, when Trump would say some outrageous thing during the campaign, oh, he's dead. Oh, there's no way. He called John McCain a POW, a loser because he got captured. Right. That's the end of his campaign. Nope. And I would say that with, you look at the trans stuff, you say, oh, that's it. They finally got pushed back. It's not going to happen. Look at Penn. Look at all this stuff. Okay. 10 years. Is that the way it's going to be? If history is the past is prologue, it'll swing back. They'll win because there hasn't been an issue they have pushed forward yet, as crazy as it sounds, that they haven't eventually won. And that's what they think. They think they will be, and it comes back to, with all due respect to your viewers, we don't have the fight it.
Yeah.
Because let's be honest, if you're not, and some member of your family or friend is not having an abortion, it doesn't affect you. Well, you can say it doesn't. If you're kids aren't competing against a transgender kid. Well, it's not affecting me. Gay marriage, how does that affect me? I mean, because we have adopted in some small way the God of self, right? That, well, it's really about how it affects me and my kids. And if it doesn't really affect me and my kids, then, I can't really fight about it. We have some great warriors out there. Don't get me wrong. There are a lot of folks out there who do, go in front of abortion clinics and devote their lives to this. But the vast majority of us, particularly, and look, I would say among all faith groups, the Catholics are the best by far, not even close. There's no close second. In fact, I have some friends of mine who are pro-lifers who have converted to Catholicism simply because the Catholics are willing to fight, and that the other religious groups have basically abandoned the field. Even the evangelicals. I mean, young evangelicals are not pro-life. They certainly aren't going to fight it anymore. It's just the reality is we do better. So to you Catholic listeners, thank you. We're doing better, but we're losing. So that means we're not doing good enough. And by the way, we have the truth. They're winning with obvious lies. They're convincing people of something that is an obvious lie, that is not of God. We have God and we have the truth, which are one and the same thing, and we're losing. That ain't him. That's us.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm not sure that's going to speak well of us. I always talk to groups. I talk to pro-life groups, and I feel, I apologize because I say, look, you're here. I'm preaching to the choir, and I understand that, but I just have to say, one of my favorite Bible quotes is, "Too much is given, much is expected." And then at least
it's the scariest quote in the Bible for me.
But then it goes, "But to whom more is given, more is required." And by any measure of human history, we're the more. I mean, no civilization in history has had more than us. Our bar is incredibly high, and we are not even close. I mean, you can say, well, I'm going to be judged on how I lived my life. Yes. But it's not just what you did, it's what you didn't do, right? It's sins of omission.
Sins of omission.
And if you go get up every day and you see what's going on in this country and the millions of babies every year that are a million are being lost. Now it's less than 1 million because pregnancies are down overall. And you don't think that you have some sin of omission, I don't think you're reading the same Bible I am.
That's powerful stuff. On the topic of we're losing, okay.
Objectively.
I wanted to ask you about MAGA, about how far the left has gone, and we've obviously had kind of the possibility of third parties many times before. Are we more primed today for the rise of a third party than in previous times, or are we just on repeat?
No, our system is set up for a two-party system. I mean, our laws in the states, our voting laws, the whole, now, is it impossible? No, but it's been tried before. I mean, there's a chance that a party could rise and supplant one of the other parties. That's possible. And that happened with the Republicans and the Whigs.
Republicans, yeah.
So there were 3 parties for a while, but it quickly went away.
But do you think Elon Musk or somebody like him could make a party that takes from both and be a viable candidate?
And what are they for? I mean, they'd be for look, the Democratic Party is the party of the left. The Republican Party is the party of the right. That left-right dichotomy came about when? Do you know when?
No. I mean, I could tell you like the Democrats almost flipped over throughout history. They kind of flipped on a lot of issues for sure. So
that left-right dichotomy.
French Revolution,
No.
the French Parliament, like who sits on the right and left of the king?
No. I mean, I'm talking about how the political parties, the Republican Democratic Party, became left and right.
No, I don't know.
It was 1970s, 1980s. Part of that, there was many conservative Democrats as there were liberal Democrats in the Democratic Party. The Democratic and Republican Party were regional parties based on the Civil War for 100 years. All right? You couldn't get elected as a Republican in the South, but they were conservatives. And you couldn't get elected in the North if you were a Democrat. But there are, a lot of liberal Republicans who got elected. So the parties were not ideological. And that would have actually been a better environment for an ideological party to come forward and be a third party, right? But now you have a logical split between the two parties. You can say, well, there's something in the middle. Generally speaking, people in the middle the reason the right and left formed together is because, generally speaking, there's a coherency in the ideology they have. If you're a big government leftist, then certain things follow. And if you look at the Democratic Party, it follows. Same thing. If you're a conservative, certain things follow. Now, you have some conservatives break off who don't believe those things. You have some Democrats who believe that, but it's a consistent ideology that holds the group together. If you're in the middle, you have ideology pieces of both, none of which form a cogent philosophy. It's just, oh yeah, I agree with this. Well, what makes you? It's just it is doomed to fail. And plus, just the hurdles to get on the ballot and all the mechanical problems of a republic that was set up for two parties is almost insurmountable. So no, I get in the tent and start working in your own party.
Completely different topic. I just kind of more political stuff. I want to basically talk about how you think how post-COVID world has influenced the skepticism in Americans' minds. I mean, especially the younger.
A lot of damage.
Yeah. I mean, and so the whole notion of deep state. I wanted to.
Here's the problem. The deep state is real. As someone who talked about it and fought against it and talked one of the reasons I'm for a convention of states is to go after the deep state. I mean, it is real. That doesn't mean that every conspiracy you see on the internet is true. Right. That's the problem. Was COVID a particularly egregious abuse of government power and lack of transparency? Yes. Does that mean that all government is run that way all the time? No. Right? You're talking about something that was a unique pandemic that people thought justified the ends means justification to get people to do things they wanted to do. They lied to them.
Let me ask you this. Big Pharma is really, people are very skeptical now because I think COVID kind of launched that, but it goes beyond that. It goes to antidepressants, SSRIs, the food, RFK's, position, like all of that.
Yeah. So let's.
I'm just throwing stuff at you.
Yeah. Let's divide it up because food. I'm not going to push back all on food. I think what RFK and the Crunchy Cons and the Maha movement. I've got a bunch of kids, grandkids. I pulled out a popsicle and they said, red dye number 4, we're not touching that. I said, okay, throwing that one out. And is it a fruit pop? I said, no, it's a regular pops. Nope, we're not doing regular popsicles. I said, okay. And you know what? No problem. I have no attachment to chemicals, right? If there's a legitimate health reason to clean up, and I think there is, and I think we're at a point where technology has allowed us to be able to do that and do it in an efficient way that is that keeps the cost of food down. We are an economy that is driven by cheap food. We are a country that wants cheap food. And we do have cheap food in this country. And the question is, can we go to this Maha world and still feed people? And the answer is probably yes now. Hopefully yes. But if it's no, are we really better off with people being malnourished because the food is so expensive they can't afford it? And so those are legitimate questions, but it doesn't foreclose me to saying go for it. Do whatever, let's pursue it, but understand there's a balancing act here, right? That we have to make sure that it's healthy food, but it's also affordable food, right? And if you're paying 3 times the price of milk, is it more important to get milk into that child who needs that dairy, or them to eat soy milk or almond milk or some other milk that maybe doesn't give them what they. So those are the. But I'm good with the society working that out. No problem. Farm is a different story, because farm is a regulated area. I mean, food is, but not in the way that pharma is. I mean, you're talking about access to certain foods as opposed to, access to certain drugs that have to be approved in order to get on the market, where anybody can produce eggs, anybody can produce. I mean, that there's standards by which you produce them, but that's different than being getting an FDA license, right, to sell your drug. I don't think it's fair to blame the pharma companies for doing what the government asked them to do with COVID. How can you blame Pfizer when the government says we need a vaccine now?
Now, warp speed.
And they got money and they said, okay, we got this mRNA. And they said, well, that, and some had other technology. And given what the panic was, legit panic, because we didn't know what
everyone was panicking. Yeah.
And I was concerned too. It became clear to me within about a month or two that this was not as dangerous a disease. Yeah. Any rational looking at it, I got the emails. You were talking about your emails. I have emails that I had conversations with people, and I said, this is just for kids. We shouldn't worry about it. We should send kids back to school right away. We should focus on older people and people who have chronic disease, have some sort of diseases that are affected by this. But the rest of society should sort of go back to normal and protect those who need protected. Having said that, the reality is pharma is not to blame here. I mean, if you're going to blame anybody, blame Tony Fauci, blame the folks who went out there or blame Joe Biden for mandating vaccines and, kicking people out of the military when it didn't affect soldiers. I mean, it's ridiculous. That's the kind of stuff. Absolutely. But that's not pharma. Pharma created the vaccine, the best vaccine they could. Did they oversell it? Yeah, but I'm not sure I'd blame completely pharma, right? Because it was not pharma that was out there saying, it was the government officials out there saying this is what it did. I don't think if you go back and look at the documentation, what pharma was saying is that it wouldn't prevent the disease, that it would make the disease less severe, which is your typical flu vaccine. Flu vaccines don't prevent you from getting flu, but the flu you get is less severe. Is it worth doing the vaccine? No, unless you're someone who's particularly susceptible to a severe flu of killing you or having a serious event, then you get the flu vaccine, right? Same thing here. But they didn't sell it that way. That's what the vaccine was, but that's not how it was sold by the government. So to me, on COVID, I'm not blaming pharma. I'm blaming Tony Fauci and the folks at NIH and CDC.
Have you spent any time thinking or reading about the SSRI topic, the antidepressants, and the damage that it may be leading people to, the violence that it results in?
Yeah, I mean,
you've seen those reports.
I see a lot. So I look at it this way, that we have an agency that's there that's supposed to protect public health, right? And there's an article written earlier this week, I think. Yeah, earlier this week in the Wall Street Journal. And it was about a drug. It's actually a gene therapy that for muscular dystrophy, for Duchenne muscular dystrophy, which is, Jerry's kids. You are old enough to know who Jerry's kids are. But it's a horrible disease.
Yes.
I mean, it's 99% boys, and it's and basically they lose their ability to walk by anywhere from 10 to 13, 14 years of age, and they end up dying in their early to late 20s, okay? And it's a miserable, wasting disease, okay? A company came up with a gene therapy that arrests that disease. Doesn't completely stop it, but in fact, in the 800 kids that have been dosed thus far, according to the reports, the vast majority of them have actually improved. So they're actually regaining function, okay? Mm-hmm. Wonderful stories. But 2 kids have died, okay, because their liver reacted badly to the vaccine, to the gene therapy. And now the FDA is talking about pulling the drug. And you think, okay, I'm going to go out today when we leave here and I'm going to drive a car. 40,000 people get killed in car accidents every year. Are we going to pull cars because people die? So there is a point where there's a risk to everything we do. If you have a gene therapy that arrests a disease for 99 point something percent, or excuse me, like 97% of the people who take it, and improves their life quantitatively and qualitatively, should the FDA block those people, the 97%, from having access to that drug because 2% of the people or 3% of the people are going to die? And the answer is no, of course not. You would never do that. Why would you do that? But they do.
Well, they put the Surgeon's General warning on cigarettes, right? Because they kind of won that battle. Say, hey, if you didn't know, dummy, it
right.
could kill you.
So at some point, the FDA has to, and the government says, look, here's the facts. So SSRIs, yes, they can lead to suicide, but they can also do good things. And so you can say, well, if it's if 50% of the people are dying from this gene therapy, okay, then you have a reason you need, pull the drug, because that's just too high of a cost. But with a lot of these drugs, you have to say, well, what's the cost benefit? And it can't just be what's the cost. Because if you just ignore the benefit, then you won't get therapies. You won't get drugs. And if you don't get drugs, then you're not going to cure people, right? And so, and I get it. I don't know the SSRI issue very well, so I'm not speaking that specifically. There may be overwhelming evidence that on balance, there's more cost than benefits. Not even close. I don't know. My point is, we can't just go out and say, oh, there's bad things that happens with this drug. Okay. How does that compare to the good things that happen with the drugs? And that's how we should evaluate it.
Yeah, I think the issue is more of, let's just pick up any percentage, 1%, 0.5%, whatever it is. But if the clinical trials revealed any kind of serious consequences or side effects, what is their legal requirement to notify and full transparency with the consumer so they can make their own decision?
Every
right?
drug, I know a fair amount about the FDA because I do a lot of work in that area. So the FDA has an approval process, which is a transparent approval process. They have things called adcoms, which all the information is out there publicly. It's published. So if there was any studies out there that showed that this was whatever it is, pick the malady, it would be in the public documentation. If something has happened subsequently, then the FDA could say, look, we want you to do post-approval studies on this. That's something the FDA could do if they felt that the evidence warranted it.
Let's just switch to the economy. How does, I'm just totally randomly switching, but I just got so many topics to get through. How does the American financial Titanic not sink? It's just the way I'm phrasing it.
That's why I'm for the convention of states, because I think it's going to. It has to.
Okay, so help me with this. I think everybody kind of has this kind of basic.
And by the way, the reason Congress is not doing anything, because the public doesn't care. They care more about losing their benefit than they do about some potential financial collapse.
Right.
This generation of Americans, us, we are not going to be treated well by history. We have been the ultimate binge party goers. And we are piling up the credit cards because we're on a bender. And they're going to look back at us and say, how could you do this to us?
Well, all right, give me economics 101. If a business racks up too much debt, it goes bankrupt and it has to sell their business. The creditors take it over, bankruptcy court, dissolves the company, and I no longer have a job, right? If I'm a homeowner with too much credit card debt, everything gets foreclosed on, and I lose my house, I lose my car, and I'm screwed. What happens to a country when it goes through this?
So when we reach the point where we cannot finance our debt, we have to print more money.
Which just means higher inflation.
It's hyperinflation.
Is it going to be like post-World War I where we're using dollar bills as toilet paper?
We will inflate ourselves out of this problem. It's the only way to do it. And so we will destroy the credibility of the United States. We will. It will be. If the rest of the world was not in some way culpable for in their own deficit spending, we would potentially even lose our reserve currency status.
Right. I knew
which
that
would
was
be
a big one.
devastating.
Well, explain. Okay, so I could have said that exact line, but tell me what makes it devastating? Like, what happens practically when we no longer have the dollar as the underlying?
We have to trade in somebody else's currency.
And so, how does that hurt me just as an American, as a consumer?
So if I inflate my currency because I can't pay my debts, and I default or inflate my currency, so people are being paid back, in a sense, pennies on the dollar.
Mm-hmm.
Then people will say, okay, we're not going to invest in government debt. So we have people, the reason we're able to carry all this debt is because people want American debt,
right?
Because we're good to pay it back.
And most of these are treasury bonds,
yeah,
right? So you got another country who buys American bonds,
yeah,
and we owe them money at some point in the future. Now it's what, 32 trillion, something like that?
Yeah, 37.
37.
We have a stable currency, and we are a reliable payer. And so we get, our interest rates are lower than most other countries because of that, our bond ratings and all that sorts of things, and the trust that people have in America that we're not going to default. Once we default, people are not going to invest, or they're going to require much higher interest rates to do so.
Right.
That instead of doing transactions in dollars, we'll have to do transactions in some other currency, maybe the BRICS currency or something else. Maybe it'll be a crypto, but in other words, we're not setting the value of our money.
Mm-hmm.
The value of our money is being set somewhere else. And that is our debt right now to GDP is similar to what when Greece basically defaulted.
I remember that. What was that, like 5 years ago, maybe 10?
But we're not defaulting. Why? Because we have a reserve currency, and then we can't default.
Okay, so when Greece defaulted, I mean, what happened? Did they not? Were they not able to go buy groceries? Did they not buy gas? Like, what physically happened to the people there?
Well, I can't speak specifically because I don't know the case.
Yeah, right.
Well,
I'm just trying to figure out, like.
But I mean, they defaulted on their debt. I assume inflation was a nasty thing they had to deal with.
And so now, if people get, the way that would work is, I get a pay, somebody gets a paycheck. Let's say they make $1,000, whatever, and now all of a sudden, all their groceries, everything they have is instantly cost way more. So for some period of time, they're screwed.
You're trying to catch up.
You're trying to catch up. And so eventually everybody would catch up.
Inflation, well.
But in the meantime, everyone, the common man.
If the common man is
suffers.
getting paid $10,000 a year.
Right.
And he has $10,000 of expenses, and so he's breaking even. And in a year's time, the inflation goes up by 50%. Now his $10,000 has to pay $15,000, and he's not getting a raise as it goes up. Maybe in a year, he could go and say, "Hey, I need a raise because I just had things go up, but I'm way underwater because inflation is way more than I can afford."
Right.
And so maybe he gets a raise to $15,000 to make up for the inflation. Right. Well, another 50 years, he's behind again. So he's always catching up.
He's always catching up. But I think
he's always losing purchasing power.
And yes, he's always losing purchasing power. Doesn't inflation ultimately help the richest of the rich because they're the ones benefiting from it in a certain way, but everyone else is kind of losing out? Well, so does it create a bigger divide between the top and the bottom?
If you look at what happened with the inflation that happened during the Biden administration, who were the big winners? Asset holders.
Yes.
Because asset values went up.
Okay, yeah.
Right? And wages didn't keep up.
Right. I mean, like in Walmart and Amazon, they're able to slowly increase their pricing, but like the average little store,
inflation hits everybody. You talk to grocery stores and they were saying, "Oh, grocery store price went up." I happen to be involved with a grocery store company, and they can't just jump their prices.
They can't. No.
It takes because it sends a shock. People will say, "Oh, they'll stop shopping at that store." So they have to even though it's costing them this much, they can only increase it this much, and then next week this much. So they're losing money.
They're losing money
in an inflationary thing. They're losing money.
Yeah. I mean,
That's why when Biden went after and said, "Oh, we're going to after grocery stores," it's like, you kidding me? Grocery stores are losing money right now.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, they're increasing prices because your prices are going up.
All right. So maybe every reporter in the history of the world has asked every politician in the history of the world this question, but how do we fix the economy?
I mean, it's not hard. I mean, it just takes will.
Is it cutting?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Look, the federal government was never set up to be the safety blanket for the entire country. I mean, we were not supposed to be involved in education. We're not supposed to be involved in healthcare. We're not supposed to be involved in income replacement. I mean, that's just not what the federal government was to do. That's, if there was to be any of that, it was to be at the state level.
We have to shrink out of this as opposed to grow out of this.
No, well, we have to look. You can grow out of it, but the problem in Washington D.C. is that if you look at historically, you always measure things by a percentage of GDP.
Yeah.
Historically, no matter really almost whatever your tax rates are, you're going to collect between 17.5% and 19% of GDP in taxes. You can raise taxes more, but you just get less compliance, or you get people stopping working because it's not profitable for them to work, and you still get 19%. I mean, it just, for some reason, just the way the American economy works in human nature, you just can't get over 19.5%, 20% of GDP in taxes.
Interesting.
And for a variety of different reasons. Okay. So you figure, okay, that's our cap. Let's say 20%.
Mm-hmm.
Historically, our spending has been between 19 and 21%. So we've run little deficits most of the time. We're at 25% spending. The federal government is 25% of GDP. And that's happened since COVID. We went from a $4.5 trillion budget in 2020 to a $7.3 trillion budget in 2025. And what the Republican bill did, the
big beautiful bill.
The big beautiful bill,
yep.
It cut spending over 10 years. And I say this, what the one big beautiful bill, the principal thing it did, and the biggest money that is spent, is simply continuing the current tax policy. And according to the Congressional Budget Office, it is due to expire this year. And so close to $4 trillion over the next 10 years is simply keeping the policy the way it is. If you eliminate that, okay, and you just look at what's been added and what's taken down, it cuts about $500 or $600 billion net. Okay?
Okay.
You say, well, we went from 4.5 to 7.3, cutting 500. That's pretty good, except it's not 500. It's 500 over 10 years.
Over 10 years.
So it's $50 billion a year. We increased spending by $2.6 trillion, something like that, and we're cutting $50 billion a year. Now, did we actually cut more? Yes, but we added more. We did no tax on tips, and we did no tax on overtime. We did no tax on Social Security. We did all these other things that cost money. We put money for the border, money for defense. If you took all those out, I mean, we cut about $1.8 trillion, which is, $180 billion a year. Again, annual increase, 2.6. We cut 180, but then we added back 100 and some.
Right.
I mean, it's not serious.
Right.
Nobody takes it seriously. Why? Because we have a president who doesn't take it serious. Donald Trump does not care about deficits. He just doesn't. But he's going to come up a cropper. I think Trump does want to shrink the size of government. I do believe that. I think that's what Doge was about. To me, the only way he's going to do it is through convention of states. That's my that's my two cents.
Yeah, that's where you are. Does that bill just also have just too many areas to it? I mean, should bills be that big? I mean, shouldn't you slice these things up and do little bills?
Politics is the art of the possible. And one of the things that is some of the advocates of the Article 5 Convention is a provision that I think 40 some states have, which is one bill, one subject.
Mm-hmm.
So if they did that, then they would do it. Otherwise, you have these big bills because you're buying votes.
Yeah, you're buying votes.
You just, okay, if I want this, I won't vote for this unless you give me this. Okay, that goes in. I won't vote for this. So it's the way it goes.
Right. Can we talk about Iran and Israel?
Sure.
Why are we still involved with Iran? How should this be being handled? It seems like bombing them and then them telling us, okay, we're gonna bomb this place, so go ahead and get everybody out. It just seems like we're playing a game. I mean, is this?
Well, it is a game. There's no question it's a game. But the question is, what game are we playing? And I mean, just all candor, you're talking to a guy who has been talking about Iran now for 26 years.
Yes, you have.
Okay. And I have steadfastly believed that a country that is the fourth largest reserve of oil and gas doesn't need nuclear power any more than Saudi Arabia needs nuclear power, any more than than any other Gulf state needs nuclear power. They're developing a nuclear program for one reason, and they want to use it to, number one, protect the regime, and number two, destroy their enemies. And why am I particularly concerned about Iran? Because of their religion.
Yes.
And their religion is Muslim. And you can say, well, it's just, you're picking on Muslims. No, specifically it's Shia Islam. And Shia Islam is a particularly troublesome sect of Islam. It is not the majority, it is the minority. And Shia Islam is based on let's just say, belief that there's an individual known as the Mahdi, who, according to Shia Islam, lived hundreds of years ago, and was the in-line successor of Muhammad, a descendant of Muhammad, who was going to be killed by others who wanted the Sunnis, who did not believe in descending in the leadership of Islam being a descendant of Muslim, but believed in the Presbyterian view of the world, which is a group of elders get together and pick the leader. And that's who the successor of Muhammad was, not Muhammad's daughter who was Fatima. Fatima.
Yeah.
And I forget the guy's name who was married to her, so it would have been him. It wouldn't have been her. So it was her husband, but he was killed, and his son was killed. And so the folks who were over here running Islam, there was another sect who were loyal to the line of Muhammad, yes. And these folks kept killing off the lineage till we got to the Mahdi, mm-hmm. who was a little boy, so to speak. It's questionable whether this is true or not, but they believe it, so it is what it is. And that he was hidden in a town of Qom, was in a well from being killed, but he did not return. He went into a state of dissipation, so he is everywhere, right? And at some point, he will come back and lead Shia Islam to conquer Sunni Islam and then the world.
Wow.
Okay.
Is that the ultimate jihad?
That's the return of the Mahdi.
Okay.
Okay. You'll hear that term, the return of the Mahdi. And you over here, the leaders in Iran, they talk about the Mahdi. They've spent money in Qom to create shrines and things for him returning.
This is their Messiah.
This is their Messiah. And when does the Mahdi return? And Armageddon. So in order for the Mahdi to return, there has to be a conflagration, a major conflagration. So the idea that these folks are afraid and don't want to have a nuclear war is folly. It's exactly what they want.
I listened to your debate with Ron Paul on this very issue, and he was arguing that exact point, against you. And yeah I remember, I saw that.
So
again, it was a long time ago, but people still say it.
I have a real gift. I believe people when they tell me what they're going to do.
I'm seeing a theme here. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so when they tell me this is what they want, and that they see the United States and Israel as the great and little Satan, and that they need to be destroyed, and they're developing a nuclear weapon, I believe they'll use it. Unlike Russia, who, look, mutual assured destruction works against most countries. But when the country wants to have an Armageddon event, it doesn't work.
Because the
And
Armageddon is the invocation of their great religious event.
Exactly. Yeah. And so you can say, oh, they don't believe that. Yeah. They say that about us, right? That you Catholics, you don't really believe this. You just do it because you're trying, it's good for you. No, there's some people who are actually very religious. And if you're not religious, you tend to sort of dismiss people's religious tenets. And I think as someone who has very, sincere religious tenets, I recognize when other people do, and I believe them. I don't believe the rightness of them, but I believe they believe it.
Yes.
And I think for Orthodox Catholics in particular, to dismiss Iran, you are in the same ghetto as the folks who dismiss you.
Wow. It's interesting. If we thought that we had to have, an Armageddon type battle where the world is burning in order for Christ to return, You
don't think there'd be, throughout history, there would be bands of folks trying. And guess what? Throughout history, there've been bands of folks doing this.
Yes. Interesting. How does
they live it? I mean, it's not like, again, just pay attention.
How'd you learn this stuff about the Middle East? I mean, did you just read books? I mean, yeah.
Read books, talk to really smart people. I mean, Bernard Lewis was a guy who I got to know and learned a lot from him. He's a professor at Princeton, who's probably the smartest guy on this issue.
Tan Books is here to help you become a saint. That's why we do everything we do. We publish thousands of titles, literally, that are specifically written to help you get to heaven. Everything from the lives of the saints to the writings of the saints, the greatest doctors of the church, the great spiritual masters, Alphonsus Liguori, St. Francis de Sales, and so on. So please come to tanbooks.com and find the book that God wants you to have right now so that you can get to heaven and be a saint for eternity.
There is a growing movement of Americans who are questioning Israel's moral standing, especially regarding Gaza. Is it time to scrutinize Israel more closely?
I guess my answer is, I don't know of any country in the world, maybe other than the United States, that is scrutinized more than Israel. I mean, you have the Human Rights Commission in the UN that has cited Israel like 1,000 times and never cited Iran, or maybe cited like a few times. So the idea that Israel is not, most of Europe is very antagonistic toward Israel. It's not supportive of Israel, in part because of the increasing Muslim population in Europe. And so you can say, well, we need more. I mean, Israel and the United States are now having relief crews in Gaza to supply relief to the Gazan people, and the Hamas is setting up guns and shooting people who come anywhere close to it. Because why? Because they want to control the food, because they don't give it to the people, they take it themselves, and they use it as a way of keeping power. I mean, it's just hard. Again, are the Israelis perfect? No. Are we perfect? No. If you look at the numbers at Israel as far as civilian casualties compared to soldiers who are, jihadists, or if you will, Hamas rebels who are killed, the civilian to soldier ratio is the lowest in any war in history. Again, I think it's important for people who, yes, we need to look at it, absolutely, but then do the work. Don't just say, oh, we need to look at it, as if it's not your job. If you're going to raise the question, at least try to find out the answer. And what I find is a lot of people just sort of raise the question and think, oh, well, Israel gets treated differently, and I believe everything Hamas says. I believe nothing Hamas says. There's no reason anybody in this country should believe anything Hamas says. They are not truth tellers. Let's just be honest who they are. It is a heretical, it's a heretical religion that is premised on a lie, right? I'm
with you.
Look, I'm not saying you can't be Muslim, you be Muslim, you be Hindu, whatever you want. As a Catholic, I don't believe your religion. I think and therefore I sort of have to, I question when people come forward with things that are provably false repeatedly, then it has nothing to do with your religion. It has to do with the fact that you repeatedly are saying false things. And by the way, in your religion, you're allowed, according to the Quran, you're allowed to lie if it serves your greater purpose.
Yeah.
So why would I believe them? I believe that Israel is a democracy. It has representatives from all factions of Israeli life. There are Arabs in the Knesset. There are Christians in the Knesset. There are Muslims in the Knesset. I mean, they do represent. Now, is it an overwhelmingly Jewish state? Yes, it is. Yeah. Right. But there's more freedom for Christians and non-Jews in Israel than there is in Muslim countries for us. I mean, I've got my former one of my former campaign people was the chair of the International Religious Freedom working group that President Trump appointed, and now she does freelance work all over the world, protecting Christians primarily from Muslims, right? And Muslims from Hindus, and Hindus from Muslims, and I mean, but the common theme is there's nowhere that they're protecting a minority from Christians.
Yes.
Okay, and so it is a problem, right? And so the idea, and by the way, Christians and Jews, and the idea that Jews are persecutors is not historically very often. I mean, I don't think you can look back. Maybe in the Old Testament you might find some of that, but the idea is that Jews are, expansionist, persecutorial, colonial type of operation didn't exist ever. Yeah. And doesn't exist now. And so to sort of put that on them, that, hey, they just want to control Gaza. They gave Gaza away. They don't want Gaza. They don't want to be in Gaza. They just want to be left alone. They want Gaza to leave them alone. But the people who took over Gaza took all the aid and they turned it into weapons and tunnels to try to defeat Israel. And so what are you supposed to do? You're supposed to say, okay, we'll get rid of those tunnels and let them take over again so they can. I mean, I just look at, I don't look at it. I obviously don't believe that Israel is the same Israel that is in the Bible. It's not. No. That's not the issue. Right. The issue is geopolitically. I always try to do what's in the best interest of the United States. And the best interest of the United States is to support allies, okay, who share our values. Israel is an ally, has been a very reliable ally, and they share our values.
That's great. Just kind of general topic. In hindsight, was Bush's invading Iraq in 2003 a mistake? It
was bad intelligence. You make bad decisions, you get bad information. Yeah. And we got bad information. And had we had the information that we know now, that he was not actively developing a nuclear program or a chemical or biological weapons program, he would have never gotten the votes to go in.
Given everything we've talked about.
And then I have to go back, because I was one of the guys who voted yes. Yeah. We had just survived 9/11. And again, context. 9/11 was a huge failure of intelligence. Why?
9/11 was a huge failure of intelligence. I feel like because the agencies couldn't talk to one another.
They didn't talk to each other, and they didn't, quote, connect the dots, right? You had all these data points.
FBI knew stuff, CIA knew stuff.
And even within the agencies, they didn't take the dots and they didn't put it together, okay? So, and that was, if you look at the afterward, the 2 or 3 years afterwards, it was all about intelligence failures of not predicting events, that they miss things. Now come forward and you have dots. And there were plenty of dots out there that Saddam was developing this capability, right? Purchases, movements of personnel, movements of things, development of sites, things. So there were dots. And his rhetoric, which was, he was not denying it. He wouldn't let inspectors in. I mean, he acted like someone who had his hand in the cookie jar, without question. I mean, if he didn't act that way, probably wouldn't have gotten the votes, but he did. And he wanted people to think he had a nuclear weapon or was developing one, right? And so you have the dots, you have his behavior. Now, you remember Congress, and you're sitting there, and you got the dots, and you got the behavior, and you say, well, I can do nothing. And he drops a nuke on us, and we are toast, right? Or he drops a nuke on Israel or on Europe or something, and all of a sudden, you are just repeated what just happened. In other words, we badly, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or you can take him out and make sure it doesn't happen. What's your choice?
I hear you.
In the environment, you remember 9/11.
I do.
I mean,
I've never felt so patriotic in my life.
Right.
It's like minutes after
And
my wife was pregnant and I was pissed, and I was like, if there had been some kind of like Marine recruiter table that I walked by, I might have signed up.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
I know.
I felt that, you know?
But imagine sitting there as an elected official, which I was,
Yeah.
and this happened on my watch. It ain't going to happen again.
Yeah.
And so look, we made a mistake. No question. It was wrong. But we made a decision at a time frame and based on information. The information was wrong. But there was certainly a lot of things pointing to that fact. And so it was a rational decision to make at the time. It turned out to be the wrong one. But to go back and say, oh, these people are warmongers and they just wanted to go to war. No one wanted to go to war. We had just fought a war in Afghanistan. We didn't want to go to war in Iraq. I didn't want to go to war in Iraq.
What's your opinion on George Bush and his presidency? I mean, you worked with him closely. I mean, what's your whole take on him and his presidency?
He got sidetracked by 9/11.
Yeah.
I mean, I think he could have been a very good president. He did not surround himself with good people. He surrounded himself with people who didn't believe what he did. Whether it was Karl Rove or Josh Bolton or Andy Card or a whole bunch of other folks. He surrounded himself with people from his dad's generation or people who were close to his father and with the establishment Republicans. And Bush himself was not. Bush was much more of a conservative. And one of the reasons I didn't initially support him for president, but I eventually did and became friends with him. And having served with him when I was in leadership of the Senate, his team did everything they could to keep me away from him.
Really?
Because he and I had a very close relationship. He liked me. He agreed with a lot of the things I wanted to do, but they didn't want him to, because I was the conservative troublemaker.
Yeah.
And so they kept him away. And you know, it is what it is, but he missed many, many opportunities to do good things. He made some deals to get things done that his people told him to do that he didn't have to do, like on Medicare prescription drugs and on No Child Left Behind. I mean, there's just many things that, you know, many of us walked the plank with him on that turned out not to be great policy.
One other kind of substantive issue that I haven't really gotten to yet, and I just want to hit it before we kind of come up to your kind of present day, current day. Let's talk about the federal marriage amendment and your work on that, because you're known as like the pro-life guy and also the marriage guy, among other things. People forget sometimes about the other many things that you've done. But can you just tell us kind of the work you did in your book? You wrote 300 pages on the significance of families and culture, right? Yeah. But what was the work you did on that, and where did it go, and what was the result?
I worked with a guy named, because I was in leadership and I was a lightning rod.
You were the third highest ranking senator, which means, if I understand, like you got your Senate Majority Leader, and then you got the whip, who's supposed to go get the votes, and then you were really like the chief strategist. Like you have to figure out what the
No, I mean,
what is that third
I'm
position?
The chair, so I call meetings and, you know, other special events. So I get to organize, you know, if I have guest speakers come in or something like that to talk to the caucus, and so I run the caucus and all that kind of stuff. And I was the principal job of the chairman is to communications. So I was the guy who went in front of the sticks and talked to. Other than the leader, it was me. Okay. And so. So I did. I had a lot of media exposure when I was there, and so and your question, I'm sorry, was
federal marriage
amendment.
Marriage
so
amendment.
I was in that position, and I I wanted to get a marriage amendment done. But I thought, given the hatred of me by the gay community,
Yes.
and you know how horrible
Yes.
they were. We don't need to discuss that
No.
here. But they did some really, really bad things. And a lot of my colleagues, as in leadership, they were saying, look, we don't want you to take, you're taking leadership on abortion. That's enough. Why don't you give this to, let someone else take this. And so there's a good friend of mine, Wayne Allard from Colorado, believe it or not. It was a conservative from Colorado, and he passionately believed in this. So he was the prime sponsor. I was the scope, but I did work on it, but I let him sort of take the lead on it because he really wanted to. But I was the one that sort of pushed it and insisted upon a vote. Most of my caucus. So to get a vote, right, you have to move to proceed.
Right.
Right. And so, so I wanted to get a motion to proceed, but to get a motion to proceed, you've got to get your leadership to agree to bring it up and to spend the time to talk about it and to vote it. And we had a caucus on it, and the majority of my caucus did not want to bring it up. And for a variety of reasons. And so I just sort of went to war against folks like John McCain, who was going to run for president, and he didn't want to have to vote on a marriage amendment. So it's not going to pass, and because none of the Democrats will vote for it, and some of the Republicans won't vote for it. So why are you bringing it up? I said, because I want to get it on the record, and I think we have to show that this is important. And he said, well, it doesn't matter. He said, this was the argument that I got, not just in caucus, but on the floor. This is just mean-spirited, that, nobody's questioning marriage. That's what they said. No one's really trying to change marriage. You're just trying to be, mean to gay people. And so what if marriage is changed? That's the other thing. It's not happening, but if it does, who cares? That was sort of the argument. Number one, deny it's happening. Number two, even if it is happening, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Wow.
And so that was the argument I got. Eventually, I was able to rally enough of my colleagues to get the vote, to agree to bring it up. And on the motion to proceed, we lost.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't even get 50 votes. I think we got 43 or 44 or something like that. It was pretty bad. But we debated it for at least a day or two.
Yeah.
And so I got up there and I said, this is, one of the most important issues that we're ever going to deal with. And, this is an institution upon which society is founded, and we are going to destroy it, and we are going to pay the price for it if we don't stand up for it. And
another prophecy.
And I was just called a hater.
Yeah.
And a bigot.
A prophet is never welcome in his own town. So
ahead of my time.
Yeah, for real. And so what are the biggest threats? This question's too big. What are the biggest threats to American culture as of right now? I mean, because the gay marriage is all the way out of the bag, I mean, when you think of the biggest problems, what are they?
Well, I think it's a continuation, and I would add, and I think I talked about this a little bit in the book, I might not have, but the left hates competition. So what does that mean? They will silence you. And what you saw a lot of this with the attempt to try to limit political speech on the internet and other places, and Biden and the government trying to use their sources to do that. You see these groups out there that rate news agencies, so they, they're not reliable, so you can't advertise with them. And so there's all sorts of attempts by the left to get after speech. And thankfully, the courts have been great. The biggest threat, in my mind, there's a lot of them. One is the United States Senate. The filibuster rule can be changed with 51 votes. So they can change the rule and with 51 votes and eliminate the filibuster. And if they do, they'll pack the court. So they'll pass a law because there's nothing in the Supreme Court that has 9 members.
Right.
There's nothing in the Constitution. It's a law.
FDR added what, 3 or 4?
Tried to, but it didn't go through.
It didn't always have 9 though.
They had 7.
7. Okay.
7 to 9.
Okay.
And then, but they would pack the court, so they'd have a majority. They'd put 4 new members on, and they or 3 or 4. They put 4. They put 4 new members on, so they have 13 justices. They would win every decision because their justices don't care about the law; they care about the policy,
Mm-hmm.
and that's who they'd put on. And so they would pack the court. They would admit Puerto Rico, D.C., and who knows what else,
Right.
as a state. So
That's how they get. Yeah. That's
so
how
so they guarantee the majority in the United States
Guaranteed.
Senate, right?
Yeah.
They'd change the Voting Rights Act. They would pass the John Lewis or worse to require basically California voting everywhere. So there'd be no limit on limitations on fraud. So they hope to be able to win elections just by cheating their way to do it. I mean, that's just the beginning of
Oh my
things.
gosh. Yeah.
And
Talk about Armageddon.
and they could do it. They could do it simply by winning the United States Senate.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they won't do it if there's a Republican House or a Republican president, because then changing the rule doesn't really help you because you're not going to get anything past the other 2 bodies. So I have no doubt that once they get the Senate, House, and President, all 3 again, they will change it, and that's what we're in for. So one of the things that I am pushing for with the Convention of States, one of the amendments is an amendment to the Constitution to limit the Supreme Court to 9 members.
Mm.
And I think it can pass.
Why would we need more than that, other than mischief?
Mischief.
Interesting. What's your hope? I mean, Convention of States. I can see that's a big one. But
that's a longer term thing. It's not going to happen next year.
What's your hope for the country? What do you see as positive?
Right now it's just there's wars to fight in the sense that I'm concerned about the Republican Party and where it's going to go. Are we going to abandon our social conservative stance? Donald Trump's not pro-life. I had some time with him not too long ago, and he's called himself pro-life light. That's what he called himself. And every time I see him, he always gives me a hard time of how I'm too pro-life, and he doesn't know anybody as pro-life as me, and we can't win if we're as pro-life as you, and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And I respect that. I mean, he's a very practical Paul,
yeah.
He's done more for the pro-life movement than anybody. If he's not pro-life, I don't care. As long as he does the stuff that helps the pro-life movement, I'm good. Right. And that's more than I could have ever expected. And I'm grateful, literally, sincerely grateful to him for doing what he did. But after Donald Trump, there's a question as to where we go. There's a question as to, are we going to be the small government party? Or are we going to be a big government party? Are we going to be a party of working people? Are we going to be where are we going? Because right now it's almost a little bit of a cult of personality.
Yes.
It's whatever Trump says, that's good. Whatever he's against is bad. And that's not a party.
Do you have any predictions for what happens in the next 4 years, 8 years? Kind of what's the trajectory?
Every time the Republicans get control, the pendulum swings back. Mm-hmm. But it never swings back as far as it swung. It's just sort of shifting, eventually left. We get back, but it goes back even further. Do I see that changing? Not without a real growth and birth of faith in America. If we are no longer a virtuous people, and we are increasingly not, if we are not a people of faith, if we are not understand the basic foundational principles of our country, the likelihood of our long-term success is pretty low.
Well, that brings us full circle. So, we finish after 2 episodes.
So what you're doing, as an example, you can say, oh, your books preach to the choir, and you preach the real solid Catholics. Well, you need the choir to sing. So I'm glad you're preaching the choir and you're teaching the choir. Now you just need to make sure that they sing.
Nice. That they get out there and do something. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. That's beautiful.
And that's uncomfortable, particularly for a lot of folks who probably read your books,
Yeah.
is that they're more contemplatives.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would say to them, you have to increase your prayer life because we need more prayer. And as Epistle of James says, faith without
Works
is dead.
Is dead. And as Benedict says, and today is I don't know, is it today, Kevin, that is the Feast of St. Benedict, or is that a couple of days? Our Feast of St. Benedict sales day began when that tells people when we're recording it. It's always our biggest sales day of the year, actually.
Good.
But my point is Benedict, who's like he's our patron at tomorrow. Prayer and work, ora et labora.
Ora et labora, yeah.
And so I think you're a man who kind of has modeled this for us, and
I'm better on the work than I am on the prayer side. I've had prayer's been always a hard thing for me, to be honest with you, because my mind's just constantly racing. And so, I'll sit down and pray, and next thing I know, I'm, off somewhere else, right?
Well, you're doing good work.
I don't know, but I'm getting better. I think as I get older, I sort of be able to, a little bit more discipline in my mind, but it is always a struggle for me.
Well, that's because you're out there doing so much good stuff. Yeah. So, well, I've been so grateful for your time. I mean, 2 amazing episodes. It's flown by. I hope there's some way we can stay in contact without me bothering you.
Let's do another one.
Because you're just such a great role model in many ways. You've been a great patriot, a great Catholic, a great influence on my life. I remember seeing you on TV as a young man saying, "Oh, that's a Catholic man right there." So I'm just very grateful.
Oh, praise God.
God bless you. Thank you.
You bet.
Hey, thanks guys for checking out the Conor Gallagher Show. Please take a moment to like, subscribe, or comment, or whatever you got to do to support it. And I appreciate that very much.